morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I am your co-host, Hugh David.
And I'm your other co-host, Dev. And on this episode, we are going to be watching minute 44 and telling you all about it.
Joining us today, and has been all week on these episodes, we have John Strawn of the late lamented Super-candid podcast. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. I'm very excited to talk about John Cusack blowing Bruce Willis's head off in this minute.
Okay, so let's talk about what this podcast is all about. This particular episode, minute 44. We are in the opening salvos of the second major gunfight of the film. We haven't actually at this point. We're quite a way into the film, and anyone who walked in thinking it was going to be an action movie or saw the opening 20 minutes and thought this was what it was going to be, it's been a long while. This film has been a going home comedy and a rom-com and a few other things along the way. Now we're literally back with all guns blazing.
Yes. I think that this one, it sets the tone for the large shootout later in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, it's ironic that in this sequence, there's no casualties. We have some property damage, but I think the opening scene, we have lots of people get shot between the biker, the bicyclist, and all the people that Grocer shoots. But here, this is a completely bloodless engagement.
Yeah, which is interesting because when we went back and all looked at the fourth draft script version, that was not the case. So bizarrely,
yes, I think you said poor Carl was blown away in the exchange.
Yeah, so apparently in the originals, in the version that we have been able to get hold of, which is the fourth draft. So after Cusack and his production buddies have rewritten it, but before shooting, this scene. First of all, this scene happens at night. Second of all, the video game cabinet game is not Doom 2. It's actually Mortal Kombat. Thirdly, there are two separate characters. There is a random skateboarder with his ears plugged for the Walkman playing Mortal Kombat, which seems perfectly appropriate to the time and place. And then we have Carl, who's behind the counter, who's the guy working the store, as is in the film. Now, in the film, they collapse these two into one character. And so Carl's the one playing the video game because he's that bored. We've lost.
Yeah, I think the script as written was quite a bit more graphic in a way that probably wasn't beneficial for the show, if I'm honest. Like, I feel like if we'd had that level of violence in this film, that it would have changed the tone of the film overall. Like,
yeah, I mean, but it also shows you, I think, something interesting about what they were going for. I think it says something about the idea that they perceive this in a full-on action movie mode rather than being comic action movie mode, or comedy action movie mode.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a little bit harsher even than like Beverly Hills Cop, which is the only one that I can think of that's towing that like violence comedy, maybe Lethal Weapon as well, the violence comedy line where like actually fairly nasty things happen, but overall the tone stays quite light. And ultimately this film veers much more to the lighter side than either of those. And I think this is one of those scenes where it could have been flipped onto the other side of that line.
I find it really interesting. I'd not thought about Beverly Hills Cop in relation to this because I absolutely adore Beverly Hills Cop and saw it in the cinema and wore out VHSs of it. But I just suddenly, you know what? The thing about one of the things that surprised me about Beverly Hills Cop as well when I went in to see it was like the way, again, it moved from, like in the opening scene, it goes from comedy very fast into full-blown action. And the action is played for laughs in terms of the music, but then as the destruction increases and more cars get destroyed and the truck goes out of control, you actually feel slightly like, oh, this is not so funny anymore. And then you get the brutality. Well, hey, Detroit again. Whoa, what do you know? You get the the brutality of what happens to his friend and the way that's shot and the starkness, and then we move to Beverly Hills, and then it's all sunshine and different. And again, the comedy is the essence of it, and it's not. It takes quite a while before we get a full on the return to the sense of the start of the film. Like the action sequence at the end of Beverly Hills Cop is still one of my all-time favorite action scenes. I think it's incredibly well put together. But part of what makes it a great scene is you don't anticipate that the film is going to go down this route. And when it does, it doesn't like play it. Yeah, there's laughs in it, but they're not playing it for laughs. Do you see that? If you see what I mean? And whereas here, it's like actually, I think that's what they wanted in the script.
Yeah.
But actually, what we've got instead is a deliberate choice to make it funny. Because actually, you know what? I've seen so many of these scenes over the years, even before I'd seen this film. And I used to actually really enjoy this scene. And actually, while watching it again for the film, I've realized what a parody it really is. Like the staging and where everyone is and the way they're shooting. And despite the attempt to kind of make it relatively realistic's not the right word, but you know, there's a sense of reloading ammunition, things that get destroyed get properly destroyed, and they hit you.
It's very Hollywood, right? At no point in this sequence,
Yes.
as shot, do you feel like that kid is in any danger whatsoever.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and ironically, because we don't really feel that Martin is in any danger either.
Right.
We obviously, it's only halfway through the film, so we know the main character is not going to be killed.
Yeah.
But it's interesting the way that it's framed is Benny Urquidez, Felix does not. There's no good reason why he shouldn't be killing Martin. At that range, I was scrubbing through it. You can see items on the shelves, literally to Martin's left and right, are being hit, but Martin himself, in between those two, is completely fine. So it makes me wonder: is if you want to put a plot explanation on it, is the bomb the real thing the whole time? Is the MAC-10s, are they just a distraction to let him plant the bomb?
Oh wow. And also, is the whole is the bomb more? In this case, it really has to be a gag, because does he even have time to plant it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just so ludicrous.
Well,
that,
although I did, when I was just before the episode we recorded, I was listening to it, and at about 28 seconds into this minute, you can hear the microwave being programmed. And I had never noticed that before. But you can, as Martin is reloading, you can hear the buttons on the microwave.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
It's the world's fastest microwave programming. Like, you are intimately familiar with that make and model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the scene that we actually missed, is Felix coming in earlier to microwave a burrito in order to familiarize himself.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's while Martin was out making the phone call to a psychiatrist in the previous scene.
Felix got his lunch.
Yeah.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm trying to find. This has intrigued me as long for years, but also because we've been doing this podcast, I've been trying to find out what's the earliest example of the grocery store shootout, and I can't find it. But at least it's interesting to note that the website tvtropes.org does actually have grocery store as it's an option in their list of tropes.
Yes.
Yeah, they also list a whole bunch of related things to this scene, including what they call guns akimbo, which is where you stand two legs apart. So they've got that. They've got the shootout. But it is. I mean, the ones I always remember are the first 4 Steven Seagals, because each and every one of them has one. It's literally part of the formula. Once he does one in under Andrew Davis in Nico, from then on, every single film has one. I think the most ludicrous one is the next one, which was above. No, it's not above the law. It's out. Shoot. Oh God, I can't remember. There's all these three. They're all three names.
Out, Out for Justice, I believe.
Yeah, that's the fourth one. I got Out for Justice is so good, so good. the pool hall fight in that is insane. No, there's two before. There's the one where he met his wife Kelly Brockman. Anyway, that one has one of the most ludicrous, over the top grocery store action scenes you will ever see. But then, it is such a trope, and Alien Nation, the movie had one, and it just becomes this thing, and you kind of go, well, when and why was it? I suspect it's probably going to go back to a film I haven't seen that I understand sets a lot of the standards for destruction in cop-related movies, and that's Freebie and the Bean, which I've never seen. But my understanding is that sets a whole new level. Because even Dirty Harry doesn't you don't get the whole store shot out,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad you pointed out Bruce Willis's decapitation, because over my time of loving this film, I have subjected a lot of people to this film. And particularly in my high school years, everybody was loving it. And every single time in this scene, everyone would stop and say, how could they do that to that Reservoir Dogs cutout? Because we were all big Reservoir Dogs fans. And any one of us would have loved to have had that cardboard cutout in our house, and yeah, it just gets blown apart in this scene in just such an unnecessary, gratuitous way. Sorry,
and I think it's a deliberate choice that it's Bruce Willis's head and not Samuel Jackson, John Travolta, and Uma Thurman all escape unscathed. So there was at some point there was a discussion on set whose head gets blown off.
Someone in control of squibs had a bone to pick is what I think is going on there.
Which, I mean, I guess, if you think about it, if you think of people in charge of squibs and people who have met Bruce Willis in the mid-90s, there's probably a large overlap there, given his film career.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And of course, this is, one of John Cusack's future co-stars in his, let's call him his lesser films of the mid 2010s. I think it's The Prince he made with Bruce Willis, which I have not seen.
No, I haven't seen that.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. And of course doesn't he end up with Jackson in 14 something or other, the Stephen King film?
Yes, 1408. One of my I enjoy that as a later John Cusack. I thought it was quite fun as a kind of a haunted house type story. I think it fit well. Most of what he's doing is reacting to various special effects, but I think it fits well with him as the skeptic who ends up in a real haunted house.
I mean, I think I have to say, I do think that generally, while we haven't had as many great Stephen King adaptations as we had in the 90s, I do feel like the general quality of them is higher than a certain period of the 80s, shall we say.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, if I hear someone's made a King movie, I'm still like, yeah, I'll go see it. Still.
I didn't see Cusack's other King adaptation, Cell.
No, I haven't seen that yet. That's still on my list. But because it's Cusack and it's King, I will watch it.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But yeah, something interesting in the TV tropes they point out, something very interesting apart from the microwave misuse trope, which is quite funny. In which they explicitly say Felix puts a potato-sized lump of plastic explosive in a microwave. But they mention the fact in terms of literal names. They point out that Grosse, the man, wants to unionize the industry and turn everybody into products, the same sort of products. And of course, in the grocery store shootout, what we see is all of that being trashed. Lovely little bit of subtext right there, particularly given the way all the stuff that individual, it's that old joke about American capitalism. We want it'll promote individualism, and everything will be different, and you end up with all the same sort of products, just different colors. And Martin gets covered in that stuff as he's leaping around the place.
I was interested as he does that great little slide towards the microwave. He's right by this wall of Duracell batteries, which made me think about his conversation with Dr. Oatman about their competing brand, which I don't think they ever, maybe because they had a deal with Duracell, they couldn't name the Energizer Bunny at the beginning
you're right.
of the
That's
film.
a good point. They deliberately don't call it that.
They just say the bunny.
Battery bunny, yeah.
I always. Do you know what? We talked about that in the earlier episodes, and we didn't even come up with that, did we, Dev? Like the fact that it's not actually named the way it should be.
Oh, I think I may have mentioned it. It did always
maybe.
strike me as odd at the time. It like even when I was first watching it, I was like, Battery Bunny, like, and I just assumed they were just avoiding all brands. I had not noticed that there's a giant ass rack of Duracell batteries behind Martin Blank across from the
and I'm sure Duracell would not be happy to have their competitor name dropped.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
which it's interesting. I believe in the script you mentioned that this was a 7-Eleven.
Yes,
but it's in the film. It's become an Altamart.
Yes,
which is another maybe because it's destroyed completely at the end. But it's obviously full of real brands. But for whatever reason, in the legal negotiations, they couldn't call it the brand name store that everybody would know. You have to make up an Altamart, which sounds like the convenience store that people in some sort of science fiction dystopia would shop at.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It feels like 7-Eleven were 100% on board right up until they found out that the store got blown up, and then they're like, "Yeah, you can't do this with a 7-Eleven." That's what it feels like to me.
Considering it's the 90s, that sounds quite fair, because I imagine they don't particularly want anyone actually walking in and going, right, we're going to have a go at this. Stick it in the microwave,
This was minute 44 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers, and co-producers, myself, Dev Sodiga, and my buddy, Hugh David.
Today's guest was John Straw of the Super-candid podcast, as well as several Discord servers and a bunch of, hopefully a new podcast coming up as well. John, where can people find you online at the moment before your new cast debuts?
So good places. I hang out on the Movies by Minute Facebook group and provide some encouragement and learn some lessons about the Movies by Minute podcasting genre. So that's a great place to find me in the comments.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, folks. Great. You can find us wherever you're listening to us right now, as well as any other good podcast players that you can access. Also, you can watch us on YouTube. You can follow us on X, aka Twitter, as well as Spotify. In all cases, our handle is Debi Radio, aka DEBI Radio. We also go to our website, debiradio.com. Once again, DEBI Radio.
And if you want to talk with us about this film or films in general or whatever else, you can join us on our listeners group on Facebook, and that is Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment, it was a feeling.